Must be opening day.
Happy to be back. Happy to see our faces.
Absolutely. That means we're getting closer to actually seeing our players' faces more frequently, and it's a common starting date nationally. And I think if you ask any baseball coach or baseball team, the anticipation of Friday is a big event. It's another phase in the process, so to speak, that gets things started, and then all the speculative things that I'm sure we're going to discuss today start to come to fruition, and guys win jobs and different things like that. So I can tell you from my perspective that the fall is not my favorite time of the year, just like off season for other college coaches and other sports if you're a fall sport or vice versa. And so we're getting close to being around our guys every day legally, and more than 2 hours a week, and all those things that make it difficult for all of us.
Cole didn't mix his words about we're going to Omaha, and I know that's the expectation, that's the goal, but he said it he was very certain when he said it. Are you comfortable with him being certain, and does it feel like that's sort of the mood in the clubhouse?
Well, I am. I hope his teammates are, and hope the rest of the staff is. And I think it's something that we've talked about in the previous 7 years that I've been here, and we've knocked on the door to be a Pac-12 champion, but we haven't even won our first Pac-12 championship, which is not easy. Certainly, if you do that and you accomplish that grind and that endurance contest and survive the gauntlet of the Pac-12, it gets you battle tested, and a lot of those teams do make their way to Omaha. So I think first things first, not to disagree with Cole, but I've taken that approach from where I used to coach, and we were making that trip frequently, and tried to instill that into our culture here, and the guys kind of bought into it. The only thing we haven't done is we haven't walked the walk. We've talked about it. So great that Cole thinks that way. Hopefully that will show up when he's in a real uniform competing against other quality hitters and pitchers and so forth. And what can we handle? What can we take care of? The expectations are there because we've been ranked, but if you just look in our conference, we're not even the highest ranked team in our conference. So we better be ready to improve and play good baseball, because saying going to Omaha is one thing, but it's a lot of work. That's what makes it so special for all of us. There are 300 teams out there. Maybe 20% of them are saying the same thing.
Cole also said that there's no I guys on the team. Have you been able to assess what this group is going to be like?
Yeah, we've been around them a lot. We had the 30 days in the fall, and then the weight training, and the 2 hours that we get in the individual stuff. And we like our culture. We seem to have pretty good chemistry. That it's easier to have in the fall because you get to scrimmage and you're playing 20 guys get to start instead of 9 guys. And so some of that chemistry stuff gets challenged a little bit with road trip lists, travel lists. We've still got one more guy than we can move forward with, and we're going to have to cut our roster down by one. And then, of course, who gets to start. Those are always kind of things that hopefully the players won't take it out on themselves, because they're not the ones that determine the starting lineup except for their playing or their performance. But that's one of always the ingredients of, you have to have talent, and you have to have a good philosophy and good culture, but that chemistry is always a critical piece, and mental toughness goes with that. Some years in the past we've been fooled, and some years we've been fooled on the positive side, and some years we've been fooled on the negative side. So the really cool thing about Friday is it represents the journey and what brings about the challenges of the journey, including playing time and success, and in baseball, momentum swings where you're hotter at certain times of the year than others. And we hit a real rough spot last year and overcame that. I was proud of the group, and so hopefully we won't have any rough spots this year. We can get through that 56 games and still have the same kind of chemistry Cole alluded to.
How has the disappointment of falling short of Pac-12 championships in Omaha and all that maybe fueled this team's fire over the years to make it that much more of a priority to get it done?
Well, all you can hope is you have a choice of how to respond to things. And the real, one of my favorite quotes is a Lombardi quote: "The real glory is getting knocked to your knees and then coming back." And I don't know if we got knocked to our knees, but when you establish goals, and the goals in this program and 20% of the other ones around are always high. You shoot for the moon and shoot for the stars and hit the moon, or whatever the quote is. And if you don't talk about going to Omaha, I don't think you have any chance of going there and preparing for that. So I hope that I think it's motivated our coaching staff to look at everything and do a better job at everything that we can control, and hopefully that's matriculated into the locker room. And those guys, like Cole has already said, that they have a great focus and great intent, and each and every day that they wake up, that they have that vision in mind. Because if you asked every baseball player, they'd say they want to go to Omaha. It's what you're willing to do in sacrifice for that goal.
Where's Crook at in terms of velocity and command and just getting back to 100%?
I think he's made great progress. I would like to tell you he had a spectacular fall, but that's not the case. He was still mending and getting his rhythm back and so forth. And of late, he's been closer to that dominant pitcher that we think he's going to be. So he's worked awful hard, so hopefully that'll reveal itself as we move forward.
As you looked at your lineup over the offseason and kind of just assessed what you had, how does it differ than something you had in years past, something that you might have this year to get you to the Pac-12 championship or to Omaha?
Well, the names are different. What we didn't feel like we handled, we didn't play the game of baseball extremely well last year, and that had maybe something to do with individuals, but collectively our starting pitching wasn't as consistent as it needed to be until the last 6 weeks or so. That showed up, and our defense was the poorest defense I think I've ever coached at this level, Division I level, as far as our fielding percentage on a synthetic turf field. And athletically, I think we've got some youngsters that have put some pressure on the returning guys, which, again, that goes back to chemistry. Is that healthy to push guys and to get the best out of guys? I happen to think it is, as long as it doesn't break them and they're looking over their shoulder wondering if they go for 8 or they're going to be out of the lineup. The infusion of that youth and talent and successful baseball player into the returning guys it looks like it could be a really successful mix as we move forward, but there's a lot of names. I mean, I couldn't go through the positions right now and say this guy's going to play this position. We've got a lot of jobs that are still out there in this 3-week period before we start that are to be won. I'd like to say it that way instead of lost. And
is that different than years past? You have more position battles coming into this Friday?
We talked last year about our depth being deeper in offense, and then some guys disappeared for a while, and not to mention any names, but some guys that were tabbed to having big years did not have big years, and that happens in our sport. It's nothing against the kids. So again, the anticipation of the journey is to see who steps it up and who does what they've done and what we've seen them done on the positive side when we put the uniforms on. And then unfortunately, guys tend to disappear. They're trying too hard, or the real uniform gets in the way, and they might hit a downside of their to begin with, but then can they come through that and end up finishing the race on good terms instead of starting the race on good terms.
Any freshmen standing out yet to you?
Yeah, there's some on the mound that are ahead of others. Kyle Robinall, Isaiah Carranza, Matt Mercer have done a nice job as freshmen. Parker Kelly's done a nice job as a freshman on the mound. Looks like we're going to use him for some critical innings. And a new guy, not a freshman, but JC transfer from Western Nevada. Jake Bennett has been very impressive, is in the mix. And probably the two freshmen that are significantly in the mix to put really pressure on a returning infield would be Matt Kroon and Travis Munoz. Those two guys at this point seem very special, and they look like they're going to have really good careers. When does that start to happen? That's up to them and us and whether they win that job.
You've got a pretty good mix of returning players, new players. Who has really stepped up over the offseason as a leader? You guys lost Tolman, and he really had that role. Who's taking that over?
Well, from the mound, I'd say that we have what we call leadership council, and the players vote for this. And so from the mound, Cole Irvin's really had physically a good fall, performance-wise a good fall, and leadership-wise a good fall. And he seems to be one of the leaders for our pitching staff. Jack Carricker, who's coming back from an injury, is leadership written all over him. He's a tough guy and a leadership kind of guy. And of course, Stephen Nagosic is a quiet leader. He goes about his business. And those three guys kind of have taken the subgroup of the pitching and taken it by the hand. And I've challenged actually David Peterson and Matt Crook to get on the front side of that ball, so to speak, in the leadership, and they've done a nice job. So I think the best kind of leadership is when everybody leads themselves. But and then from the position player side, Nick Catalano, who hasn't had a spectacular career here yet, his practice habits are off the charts. He's one of the best practice players I've ever been around, and so he's one of our leadership guys. And then Stephen Packard, who's been around a long time, a very mature guy, goes about his business, has a looseness to him that's always conducive to good leadership. And so I'd say those two guys. And then a guy that, as a sophomore, who you hope emerges, Tim Cisnera has shown a lot of leadership in the way he conducts himself and taking control of the pitching staff, which becomes critical. And we think Tim's going to have a spectacular year. He's had a very good fall. And so I like a lot of the guys are taking that upon themselves. And one of our favorite sayings is what you do is so loud we can't hear what you say. So hopefully that permeates itself through the entire roster.
You mentioned a lot of roles need to be established, but it seems like Nogo's a guy everybody feels pretty confident can handle the closer role. Is that purely based off last year? Is it with his offseason too and the national team experience?
Everything, all the above, and he's had a really good fall. And so, even as a freshman, when he wasn't the guy, his opportunity to have a spot start against Vanderbilt in that environment and doing so well and getting us deep into that game carried the momentum into last year. And his 8th inning performance was spectacular, I thought, much like Kleb before him. And then he went out this summer and put an exclamation point on that with the USA staff said that he told me he was their best guy. So that's the bar's raised pretty high when you can be the best guy in the collegiate national team.
With Mitch Carricker, how's that transition been going? And I guess is the idea this year to make it more of a transitional year, or are you just kind of throwing him in right away?
Well, he's earned it. We think he's going to do a fantastic job. Coach Stiles, a big shoes to fill. He did a lot of things for this program, and we'll always be indebted to that. And vice versa. Maybe we open that door up for him to be a full-time coach, and we'll miss Coach Stiles, but there's no, my phone was ringing off the hook, even in the middle of the year, for that opportunity to, I'd like to think, learn from our staff, be at a great place like University of Oregon, work with the talent that we have on our staff. And luckily Mitch was around and as an administrator, couldn't coach, but was an administrator, and we think it's a seamless transition. He's invested some time as a student assistant with Coach Stiles and myself. He was a catcher here. He knows our formula. Was he a pitcher? No, but I wasn't a pitcher, and I think you don't have to necessarily be a pitcher to be a great pitching coach. And so I think that transition is going to be seamless, and I don't suspect that we're going to have a national search at the end of this year. It wasn't a case of a short-term hire. Mitch is in that position as long as he wants to be in that position, the way I see it.
You kind of putting him in right away, though, or are you kind of keeping him under your wing for a while?
Well, there'll be some things that I oversee a little bit more that I didn't have to when Coach Stiles was here because we'd been together for so long. So my main concern is Mitch feels comfortable. He can't be me, he can't be Coach Stiles. He's got to be Mitch Carricker. The players all have great respect for him, and I think he's going to do a great job.
Cooper Stiles, he had some pretty high leverage middle inning situations last year. Is he going to be the 8th inning guy?
Looks like he will be. He's pitched quite a bit as a true freshman and a lot more as a sophomore last year, and he wasn't automatic, but he did a nice job, and hopefully he'll continue to progress, and we can nab him as that setup guy in front of Nagosic. So we'll see.
Does it look like Matt Crook will be under a pitch count like Irvin was last year?
They all will be to start the season. See if we can amp them up, maybe get to 90 pitches at a start and a scrimmage in practice, see how they do with that, how he's feeling. And unrealistic to think we're going to go 110 or 120 pitches with Matt early in the year. So you go into the season having a starter, but your middle reliever becomes more significant, and you're not playing like a into the season game where you're going to have a starter and then you go with your 8th inning guy and your closer if you're winning. So we'll have to split games up and give people opportunities, and hopefully those 90 pitches can get Matt and the starters deep into the game instead of in the fourth inning.